Welcome to the Affinia AdviserLogic SoA generation tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be aiming to help you navigate through the Affinia SoA wizard, which for some of you is quite different to where you've come from and what you've used previously. It's important to remember that within AdviserLogic, the template wizard is about what paragraphs and about what sections to put within your document. Most of the wizards that we're about to look at are about saying, I want this paragraph or I want this point put into my document. Most of those paragraphs or those bullet points are going to have codes sitting within them. And those codes are looking for information in other parts of AdviserLogic. So one of the key things to remember is prior to going through and starting to generate your SoA document is to ensure that you have completed all of your data entry. Now, with data entry, I'm referring to putting in your fact finder information. So going through and filling out as much detail as you possibly can. Making sure you've entered the client's current position. So what assets and liabilities do they currently own? Not just in their own name, but also via their super funds or their companies and trusts. It's the same concept with insurance. Making sure that you've put in place the client's existing insurance details. Making sure you've completed the needs analysis. Really important one, as most of you have already heard me say in prior training sessions, with the needs analysis, you do the analysis for the life cover, TPD, trauma and income protection, making sure that you're saving each and every page along and through the process. Risk logic is, of course, where you've done your quoting and your product comparisons. Once again, making sure that you've saved the relevant pages as you're going through. And then most importantly, ensuring that you have set up your insurance recommendations if that's what you're looking at. Now, hopefully you all know that when you are setting up the insurance recommendation, there's a spot in there that talks about product replacements, making sure that you've put that in, choosing the relevant reasons and consequences, because that's what's going to help build your product replacement section for insurances. Of course, you can also put in there your commission details and whether it's upfront or ongoing and what commission rates, because once again, that's what's going to flow through into the SoA for your disclosure of fees and commission section. And portfolio is, of course, where you will have set up your recommendations for any superannuation rollovers or rebalancing. Portfolio, so investment account, personally held investment rebalancing. So you do still need to go through and create all of those recommendations throughout the different features within AdviserLogic. And then once you've done all of that data entry, once you've got everything set up and saved along the way, when you go to reports and templates, you will now see one of your folder options is Affinia SoA. Within this folder, currently there is only one document in here, and that is your statement of advice. There is another Affinia folder that has a couple of other documents sitting in there, so things like fact finders and whatnot, but for the SoA, it does sit in this separate folder. Once you've chosen the document, depending on your internet, the wizard might take 30 or 40 seconds to load up. Some of you it will be quicker, just depending on who your internet is through and what sort of speed you've got set up. So once you've done that, it's about completing the Affinia wizard. This is about picking and choosing what sections and what headings and what paragraphs and bullet points are going to show within your document. This will take a little bit of getting used to. It's a lot bigger than what some of you have seen previously. So please bear that in mind that the first handful or so of SOAs that you go to generate, you will need to read each and every one of these options. In time, it will become second nature so that you know where you can skip through and what you don't need to do and everything else. So please just bear with us on this one. It is a learning experience for each and every one of you about just what selections to be making throughout the process. Now, having said that, there are a couple of little tips along the way here. Really important, the very top one, risk-only SoA. If you are doing insurance only, now this is not insurance via super where you're doing super contributions and everything else. This is pure risk. This is standalone insurance, personally held, that doesn't involve any other contributions to super or super ownership. If you are doing pure risk only, tick on this box here, and what will happen is you will have less choices to make throughout the rest of the wizard. You'll have less options pop up. It is still a matter of going through and filling in some of them, and again, this will take time to get to know what you can skip across and what not. But just know that if you are doing pure insurance only or risk only, you can tick on this box at the top. Otherwise, if you're doing anything that involves insurance through superannuation, you don't tick on this box. If you're going to be recommending extra contributions to super, don't tick on this box, because what will happen, ticking on this box is going to remove any reference to superannuation strategies from within your SOA. So please use that one for its intended purpose. Otherwise, it is just a matter of going through and filling in. So if I talk about things like the date of the client meeting, anywhere that you see the dots, when you click on it, you will see a calendar pop up. Of course, you can scroll back through the calendar and choose the date. You can also simply type the date in if you find that easier. If you're addressing the SOA to the trustee of the self-managed super fund, tick on the box. If not, you simply don't tick on the box. Date of the fact find, bearing in mind that this date could be different to the date up above, so you do still need to fill this in. These two are going to populate into different areas of the SOA, so please make sure that you do complete both date fields because they are in separate areas from within the SOA. Again, dots, or you can just type the date in. When you start working through, you'll start to notice that some of the fields do have drop-down options. So the scope of advice, what is it you're providing advice on? Once again, when you open this up, you've got the option to select all, or you can pick and choose to say, no, I'm just doing personal insurances and I'm reviewing super, whatever it might be that you are actually doing for this one client. When you then start going, personal insurance scope, because I chose personal insurance up here, I then have to say, well, what is it? What am I actually doing for their personal insurance? Am I doing life, TPD, trauma, or what type of cover am I recommending? And then you click back out of it. This is going to build that section within your SOA, being your scope of advice to say, this is what I'm advising on. Within the Affinia SOA, there is an advice limitation section. That section is going to come into the document each and every single time unless you say exclude it. So if you have got advice limitations, leave it alone, don't touch this one. If you want to exclude the advice limitations, you click on this box here to say, nope, no limitations, let's leave that section out. So if I'm wanting to leave it in, I don't tick on that. Bear in mind and be careful of the word exclude, because it means we've got something in there, you're making a decision to leave that section out of your document. So if we're leaving it in, we've got some limitations on our advice. Again, we have a drop-down menu to say what you can say we're excluding. So you can go through and say, look, we're not doing cash flow work and we're not doing any super and retirement, or whatever it might be that you have excluded from your advice. Whenever you see the double arrows here, that means it's actually a free format box. So again, by reading the wizard and saying advice limitation, list areas not covered, and the client's request and the specific reason why. So I've said that I have limited my advice by saying there's no cash flow work. So my reason for excluding would be A, B, C. So it's about typing in why you've excluded that advice. Likewise, the next box is also areas where you as the advisor lack the specialised knowledge to provide the advice. Now, this might be that you are excluded from providing advice on SMSFs, depending on what your licence agreement is. So it's a matter of going through and saying, look, I don't have specialist knowledge in SMSFs, and I'm also not authorised to provide advice on maybe margin lending or something along those lines. With the next one, it's the different way. So I mentioned a moment ago, be careful of the word exclude. Some of them have the section that says include this information instead. So this one is about the information limitation. So if your client has limited the information that they've given you, you need to tick on that box, and then you've got a couple of choices to make for your points. you've declined to provide me with this advice, you're unable to provide me with this information, or we were unable to obtain certain information. Now, this will put the pairing link or the linkage in your sentence, and then you've got the free format for the next bit. So you are unable to provide, details of current superannuation or whatever it might be. It's free format, so you're able to type in here whatever it is that you need to type in. Now, when we start moving through here, again, there's choices that need to be made. Output the needs and objectives as a table or text only. Now, there's going to be an area in your SOA that is going to show the client's needs and objectives. You get to choose. Do you want it in paragraphs or bullet points, or do you want it in a table? Each and every one of you is going to have your preference. So we've given you the option to say, do you want it in a table or do you want it in a text? Really important to make sure you choose one or the other. Otherwise, we're not going to put the needs and objectives in at all. So please make a choice in that space there. Now, with dependent types, it is a section within the SOA to show the dependents. Now, it's headed as dependents. However, there is still a couple of choices you can make. It might be that you have dependent children. You might have non-dependent children, or you might have other dependents. Now, that might be that they've got their mum and dad living out in the back, out in the granny flat, or something like that, but they are financially dependent, but they're not their actual children. So again, it's about making choices as you're going through. Now, these next few fields are about other options that you can put in. So if the client is currently salary sacrificing, if they've got some accrued annual leave or sick leave or long service leave, it's about filling in these boxes as you're going through. They're all free format, so it's about going through and saying, yep, you have got accrued annual leave of, let's go 30 days. Accrued sick leave, you might go 2 weeks. It's about how you want to reflect that information in your SOA. So just make sure you go through and say, right, this is what we're wanting to put in. As you go through, retirement expenditure, keep it as a current, expecting it to be increased or decreased in retirement. Again, simply about making choices as you're going through. Now, I should stress that if you have chosen risk only back up the top, some of these fields are going to be applicable, some of them won't be. So if you're doing risk only, you're obviously not going to need to choose an SMSF investment style. So you're not doing superannuation because you've chosen risk only. It is going to take a couple of goes before you get your head around these wizards, so don't panic the first time if you go through and tick everything on and fill every box in. The worst thing that happens then is that you might need to manually delete some areas out of your SOA. So that's the absolute worst thing that's going to happen, is that you might do some manual deleting when you get to your SOA. So don't panic if you start going through and putting lots and lots of other pieces of information in. Now, existing pension commenced before the 1st of January 2015. If that's the case, click on the button. If not, leave it alone. Estate planning, have they got powers of attorney currently in place? If so, what type? This is going to impact on the relevant paragraphs that come through into your SOA. So just go through and make the choices as you're going. With some of them, you will see the select all option. That, of course, is going to put in the 3 different types of attorneys, power of attorneys, into your SOA. If you know the name of the power of attorney or the alternative estate planning power of attorney, so they might have 2 power of attorneys in place, or it might be, they've got their mum and their dad or their brother and their sister. You've got a space to put the 2 names in. Now, once we get to the next bit, this is when we start talking about more strategies, other strategies. What else are we putting into this document? When you go through, it's a click down. It's about picking and choosing what areas you're putting into your SOA. So if you're talking about aged care, you tick on the box and you'll have more options come up. It's about going through and saying, what is it I'm doing with my client? Now, I'm going to click on debt management. I'm going to click on estate planning. And if I scroll down, I'm also going to choose superannuation, just to give you a couple of options here. So because I've chosen debt management, I've got another heading that wasn't there a moment ago. I can now choose what areas of debt management I'm wanting to put into my SOA. Had I have not chosen debt management as a strategy topic, this heading wouldn't be there. I would not even be seeing it. But because I've chosen it, I then get some options to say, okay, what am I actually recommending for this client? Am I saying consolidate your debt and, I don't know, maybe look at applying for an offset account? I choose those options and then they will come in appropriately to my SOA. Estate planning strategies to exclude. Again, guys, that's that exclude button that you need to be mindful of. Because I've chosen estate planning, all of the estate planning strategy options are going to come through into your SOA. However, I could, if I needed to, choose from the drop down and say, you know what, I'm not actually going to talk to these guys about funeral bonds, so I don't want the funeral bond section to appear in my SOA, but leave these other options in there. Let everything else show, but just don't put the funeral bonds because that's not something I'm discussing with the client, whatever it might be that you're wanting to exclude from the SOA. As we start going down, we get wills. What is our recommendation about a will? Again, it's a drop down, so we get to choose some options. You get to say prepare a will, review it, or raise some actual matters with a solicitor. If I've chosen that, I will then choose from the next drop down as well, saying about what is it we want you to talk to your solicitor about. You know, I'm referring you off to a solicitor. I want you to talk to them about gifting and guardianship and maybe distribution of super proceeds. Because I've done that, I've then got a couple of extra options that I do need to fill in. Again, they were not there before. They've only appeared because of the decisions and the choices I've made up here. Again, advanced care directive, and then when we keep going through, I'll get to my heading about superannuation. So I've done my debt management, I've done my estate planning, and now I'm looking at my super section. So what is it about super that I'm recommending? I choose from the drop-down menu to say, this is what I want you to do about your super. I do want you to do non-concessional contributions. Is it that and the government co-contribution, or is it just to get some non-concessional into your super? Low-income earners, you would be ticking on the one that includes the government co-contribution. For everybody else, you'd say non-concessional. If you're doing a recontribution strategy or you're saying retain your existing super, salary sacrifice, it's simply about going through and picking all of the right choices based on what you're recommending for this particular client. Because I've chosen non-concessional, I then get to say, okay, what is it I'm actually recommending? What am I doing for this client? Is it regular or is it a one-off? Again, you make the decision and then you will go through and fill in whatever else comes up. So which fund am I saying to contribute to? And we put in there whether it's, you know, IOOF, Netwealth, whoever it might be that you are recommending for that client. This is still going to be putting in the relevant paragraphs with codes, looking back to make sure your recommendation has been set up back in the portfolio tab. So you do still need to create that balancing transaction recommendation within portfolio. This is just going to pull through the paragraphs to then populate with the information back in the portfolio area. Now, if I continue through this, making a non-concessional contribution will limit the impact of funding insurance premiums through super. So coming back to that before, if we're doing insurance within super, if this is appropriate, we can tick on the box to say, look, yep, we are recommending some ongoing contributions to your super to cover the insurance premiums. That's just going to put in that extra paragraph explaining what that's all about. Underneath here, retain existing insurance. Reasons to. Why are we recommending that the client retains their existing insurances? Going through and picking and choosing the relevant options. Items to consider when retaining. Again, it's about picking and choosing what those considerations should be. These are all standard wording that we've been provided from Affinia. So making sure you choose the relevant option will put those points that you're used to seeing into the document automatically for you. More information. Are we including a PDS? If you are, pop the name of it in there. So it's the IOOF ABC PDS dated XYZ, whatever it might be. So it's about putting that in so that when we get to that section of the SOA, that name is automatically going to appear for you. Now, down the bottom is a little bit more simplified. Are you wanting to include your recommended asset allocation section? I would probably suggest that you're going to do this 99% of the time when you are recommending any form of investment or superannuation fund. It's going to put a table in saying, look, once you've done all of this, this is what your asset allocation is going to look like. Likewise, if you are recommending a rollover of super, replacement of product for insurances, make sure you tick on that little box there to ensure that the product comparisons are going to come through for you. What you need to consider about that replacement of product. So when you click on this drop down, what is it that you've got? Transition of funds, market volatility, any sort of switching costs, potentially tax or ongoing higher costs. Again, making those choices is going to put the relevant points directly into your SoA. Alternative strategies considered. This is an important section to have within your document. Have you considered any alternatives? If you have, what were they? Did you think about retaining the benefits in the existing super? Did you think about having the super inside or outside, depending on what you're actually recommending to the client? Did you look at waiting periods? Did you look at standalone trauma cover or linking? Now, really important one on some of these drop downs is you will see an other option or other alternative strategy in this case. Wherever you see other, if you tick on that, when it comes through into your SoA, basically what that's going to do is it will have all of your bullet points as you've chosen them, and then the bottom one will just say other. It should be in red text, which is a flag to you to go, oh, that's right, I ticked on the other. It's a flag so that you then know that you have to manually put in whatever that other option entails. So in this one, I know I'm in the alternative strategies. If I want that extra bullet point in, I'll pop through and then I'll just simply type in and go, oh, we also thought about, doing exactly what you're doing, but we discounted that because. That's what the other option is going to do for you. And you will notice that it will pop up in a couple of the different drop-down menus. It's all about saying, right, this is what it is. This is the other bullet point. And I've just been proven a liar because in this case, it actually gives you the free format box here. So you can type in your other alternative strategy in this box here. Underneath, ongoing review service. Are you providing an ongoing review service? If you are and there's fees involved, tick on the box to say, yep, put that table into my document. Ongoing commission from insurance recommendations cover the services. If that's the case, are we charging ongoing fee a percentage of the monthly investment balance? If we are, what is the percentage? And is it going to be debited from the portfolio or taken from a personal bank account? Again, this is building the words for within your disclosure of fees and charges section. Are you charging an advice preparation fee? Again, it's a choice. You tick on the box to say, yes, I am. I am charging an SoA fee. If you are, how much is it? Are you charging an implementation fee? If you are, tick on the box and how much is it that you're charging as an implementation fee? What date is on your FSG? Have you got a separate advisor profile that you need to put in? Underneath, the very last one is about your strategy flyer or your appendices, your education material, whatever name you're used to using for these. Affinia call them strategy flyers, so hopefully you're all across that terminology. What you're doing here is choosing to say which of those flyers you want included in the back end of your SoA. So when you drop down, you can go through and you say, yes, I want the strategy flyer about super. I want the one about salary sacrifice and non-concessional. I do want to put in the one about SMSSs or divorces or whatever it might be relevant to your recommendations that you've made to your clients. From this, we've then got the non-superannuation strategies. Same concept, you simply go through and pick which of those non-super flyers you're wanting to put in. This is where the insurance ones sit, just so that you're aware. Estate planning, debt management, they all sit under the non-super strategies as well. Really important step is once you've gone through and you've picked and chosen all of those different wizards for your client, is down the bottom, make sure you click on the Save Template wizard. Now, once again, depending on your internet, depending on how many other options you're running at that particular point in time, because I'm recording a webinar, it goes a little bit slower. But depending on all of those factors, this will then save all of those ticks, those choices, those dates, and everything else for this one client. Now, once that's done, there is another button down the bottom that says Generate. When you generate your SoA, and you can see here I haven't got a relevant number under the annual leave, so it's getting a little bit grumpy with me. All you need to do from here is click on the Generate button. Again, depending on your internet, this might take 30 seconds to a minute. I have seen it take up to 2 minutes for really poor internet. So what it will do is generate your SOA document. Now, I'm not clicking on the generate button right now because I know with running the webinar, it will take a fraction longer to do that. However, once it's generated, you will have a notification pop up in the top right-hand corner, and you will see your SOA there ready for you to click on to actually download and start editing. Now, the amount of editing will vary for each and every one of you, because whilst we've done our absolute best to include or exclude all of the relevant bits and pieces from Affinia's head office point of view, some of you are still going to want to add in extra pieces of information to your document. Really important to remember that it is just a Word document once it's generated. So from there you can edit it as much or as little as you feel is appropriate, bearing in mind, of course, your compliance requirements. Now, over and above that, for those of you that do use cash flow, one of the limitations that AdviserLogic currently has is coding within an SoA template from cash flow. It's not something that we're able to do currently. It is something that we are still working through. The reason for it is that not all of our clients actually go down the path of doing cash flow modeling, which means that not everybody has the cash flow module within their account. If we put cash flow codes into a document and then you don't have cash flow, it basically corrupts the document. So right at the moment, there are no codes within the SOA for cash flow modeling. There are a couple of sections that will say or have some instructional text to say, in this spot is where you put ABC cash flow module. So if that is the case, if you have done your cash flow modeling and scenarios, you do need to extract the information or the tables, the Excel spreadsheets from within cash flow to then copy and paste into those spots within your SOA. Now, obviously this is all covered within our cash flow training, but just so you know, if you have got your scenarios in here, there's two ways to extract the reports. One, if you are in cash flow, and I'm in my current scenario, I can export to Excel from this spot. Really important to remember that if I'm on Jacob's tab, I'm going to see each of these tabs only for this one entity when I export. If I'm wanting to export for the super fund, I would choose the super fund and export from here. I could also, when I'm on the overall position or the main client, I can actually go through to the net position and export from there as well, which will also look at the consolidated tab as well. So that's one way to extract the data. You get it out into Excel, and then you can pick and choose what sections you're from the Excel document that you're copying and pasting into your SOA. The other option is where you have multiple scenarios. What you'll do, you'll go through and you'll have your current scenario, which you will have saved. You will have then hopefully have created a duplicate scenario. You'll set up your recommendations and you'll also save that. When you save a cash flow document, cash flow scenario, you get an added tick box option over on the left-hand side of the main cash flow list. What that allows you to do is pick and choose, 2 or 5, however many different scenarios it is that you're wanting to compare. You can tick on all those options and then you can use the comparison report at the bottom of the page. Once you're in there, there is also another export button, and that will export all of your different scenarios, both the tables with all the numbers and half a dozen or so graphs out into Excel. From there, once again, because it's in Excel, you can copy and paste into the relevant parts of your SOA. Now, as I mentioned, it is an ongoing thing that we are looking at to try and find ways that we can make this integrate a lot easier. We don't have a time frame on that at this point in time, but it is something that AdviserLogic is working on to be able to extract data from cash flow automatically into SOAs. As I said, the hiccup that we've got is that not everybody actually has cash flow module. Not everybody likes to do projections. So I guess the only other thing that I will make mention of is that when you are in the template wizard, you will see a column for the client and a column for the partner. You do need to make choices for both the client and the partner. Now, the reason for that is what you might be recommending for the client could be very different to what you're recommending for the partner. So for the client, you might be recommending to do a super rollover and future contributions to go to the new fund. For the partner, you might only be recommending retaining the existing super and starting to put in place some, I don't know, some salary sacrifice contributions. So just bear in mind where you do have a joint entity, you will see the client down here, go through and do everything for the client, and then you'll see the partners heading, and you go through and do everything for the partner. Some of you, you're going to jump from side to side. That's perfectly fine as well. Some of you will find it easier to go and say, look, for Mr. Smith, I'm doing all of this stuff here, and then go back and do the same for the partner. So hopefully that's helped point you in the right direction with the brand new Affinia SoA Wizard. It is one of those items that is going to take you a little bit of time to get your head around. The more you get in here, the more familiar you're going to become with the different questions that are being asked. As I said before, there is no right and wrong way. There's no right, go down, do everything for the client, and then the partner are jumping side to side. You will take time to get your head around what it is that you're choosing. The main one that I'm going to be asked about, and I know up front, is this risk only. Please just remember that if you are doing pure insurance only, that's when you tick on this box. If you're doing insurance within superannuation, don't tick on this box. If you're doing insurance inside superannuation with contributions, that's not insurance only, because you're then talking about superannuation. So please be very careful with this one, because when you tick it on, nothing other than insurance is going to come through into your SOA. Anyway, that's probably enough from me. So hopefully that has helped you with understanding the AdviserLogic Affinia SoA Template Wizard. Thank you very much for your time. And as always, don't forget, we've always got help available to you. Thanks everybody for your time.